So Claude Code source code has been leaked. This fella right here, Chaofan Shou, is the one that figured it out because he saw that Claude Code's NPM package included their source map file, which if you don't know what a source map file is, it is a JSON file, which actually you could just see right over here, that contains all of the original source code for that project, meaning this little .map file right here getting pushed into the NPM package leaked the entire Claude Code source code to the internet. And not only does it contain all of the source code, but we also have a reference, so it points directly to the complete unminified TypeScript source code, which was downloadable via a zip archive on Anthropic's own R2 cloud storage bucket. Now, you may be wondering, well, why don't you have any of the code open up right here? Because I'm a little bit scared. Anthropic loves to enact DMCA takedowns, which they have already done on every single GitHub mirror that they have found that contains the source code from their leaked source map file. Again, they did this. And you can see all of the repos that they specifically called out right here containing that source code. Now, there is a little caveat here. If this code is actually written by Claude Code, as they claim, then it means it's AI generated. And US law dictates that AI generated things cannot be copyrighted. So therefore, they have no standing to DMCA take down any of this code because it's not the copyright owner's behalf because it can't be copyrighted. Now, do I want to test that and try to fight YouTube's DMCA copyright system, which almost always sides with the claimant being Anthropic? Not particularly, but if we did want to look at any of the code, we could take a look at this repo right here. It's not the exact code. I'm pretty sure it is the fastest repo to ever hit 100,000 stars on GitHub, but it's from an individual, I guess there are 4 contributors now, that took all of the features and everything from the Claude Code source code and then ported the core features to Python from scratch and pushed it to this repo before the sun came up after they had seen that the leak had happened. And then they said, Python's not good enough. Let's rewrite the entire thing in Rust. So this is awesome. But how in the world did this leak happen? I mean, obviously it was an accident for them to push the .map file. Well, in order to understand that, we have to take a look at Bun. I'm not saying it's Bun's fault. Bun is a fast JavaScript bundler and runtime and test runner, and Bun's awesome, by the way. And it's also a company that Anthropic just acquired. So Anthropic owns Bun, and Bun is the bundler for Claude Code. And Bun, by default, generates a source map file. Even though technically it says it does not generate the source map by default and that the default is none, this has not been the experience for me or many others. When you do use the source map flag right here and do not specify the value, it doesn't default to none, it defaults to linked actually. And this is on the CLI side. On the JavaScript side, it also says it defaults to none. However, there is a bug that has been out for 3 weeks now that the source map incorrectly served when in production when the docs say that it shouldn't be by default. So you can go in your bunfig.toml file and set your source map to false or to none, and it shouldn't generate any source map, but they're having issues here. So frankly, I don't even know if it's supposed to not be generated by default or supposed to be generated by default because what it says in docs is not actually how it works. And a lot of people thought that this bug was what caused the Claude Code source code to leak in that source map file to sneak through. But Jared Sumner, the creator of Bun, says that this has nothing to do with Claude Code because this issue is with Bun's front-end development server, and Claude Code is not a front-end app, it's a TUI app. It doesn't use bunserv to compile a single file executable, so this wasn't the issue. That's not to say there isn't an issue that hasn't been reported on the CLI side. However, if we want to take Boris Cherny, the creator of Claude Code himself, his word for it, it is not related to Bun. It is just a developer error. So human error or AI error. Obviously, they're not going to blame their own AI for doing something like this. So really, long story long, they forgot to add *.map to their .npm ignore file, because that would have prevented all of this. And that's an issue that they probably would have caught, considering it was probably changed in a PR and nobody saw it. I bet Greptile would have caught it, the sponsor of today's video. Because Greptile is the AI code reviewer, which is an AI agent that catches bugs in your pull requests with full context of your code base, which is how they got the name Greptile, because they grep your code base and, like a reptile, eat all the bugs. Which honestly, I think is an awesome name. And it goes over some people's heads. I've had to explain that to a few folks. And I greatly appreciate that Greptile themselves call it your second pair of eyes, because an AI code reviewer, just like AI with coding, should not be the end all be all. It is a second pair of eyes. It is something that you can use to help you identify bugs that maybe you have missed, or just give it a first pass before you review a pull request. And with Greptile, you get context-aware comments on your PRs. You describe your coding standards in English, and you can personalize it for your team so it is consistent across the entire code base. And you can write rules or point to markdown files. You can scope where the rule should apply, what repository, the file pattern, things of that nature. And you can track the rule effectiveness and usage over time so you can fine tune the rules that you have set in your code base. Many companies use Greptile, including Netflix and PostHog and NVIDIA and OpenClaw, and you know how many PRs they get. I would highly recommend taking a look at this page, greptile.com/examples. Actually, use the link in my description so they know that I sent you, to take a look at how Greptile has helped these companies, and take a look at these case studies. And you can go to the actual PR itself and how it responded to these different PRs, and the score that it gave it, and the sequence diagram that's related to the exact PR that we have up here. So yeah, take a look at Greptile. They're awesome. I use them for my projects. Highly recommend. Again, if you want to check them out, use the link in the description. So there's a lot to go over in this video. I mean, there are 390,000 lines of leaked code. You may have seen the 512 or 513,000 line number. When I say 390K, that is actual lines of code, not including comments, not including blank lines. So that's a lot of code. Now, as bad as I want to show you all of the code, I will just help guide you in the right direction for what to understand in case you wanted to look at the code yourself. And we got to start with the code names. So if you type in Tengu into the code base, you will see that it occurs over 1,500 times. Tengu is Claude Code's internal project name. So this means Claude Code. If you see the term Fennec, migrate Fennec to Opus. Fennec latest is Opus. Fennec latest 1 mil is Opus. Well, you guessed it. Fennec is Opus 4.6 to be exact. And then they have Capybara. As discussed, this is Mythos, which is a Claude 4.6 variant. It is of its own name. It's not Opus. It's not Sonnet. It is Mythos. And then there is Numbat, which it literally says, remove this section when we launch Numbat. And as you can see, we have that ant user type again, so only these individuals have access to Numbat, so it must be some sort of unreleased model that we don't know anything about. And I'm sure there's more, but those are the main ones. Now, if you want to get to the brain of Claude Code, this is how Claude Code kind of works. You got to go to queryengine.ts. It is the core. It owns the entire query lifecycle and session state for a conversation. So every single prompt you type goes through this code right here. It handles the LLM API calls, the streaming responses. So if you want to know how Claude Code actually processes your prompts and how it handles LLM API calls and streaming responses and tool call loops and thinking mode and retry logic and things of that nature, this is the file you want to look at. There's also query.ts. So this whole query module and everything that's tied to it, that's where you start. And then you can branch out from there or go down to tools.ts and check out all of their tools. It lists everything from internal only tools to all the tools that we know, agent tools, config tools, things of that nature. Their entire tool system's right there. Their permission system is pretty interesting because they have default, they have auto, they have bypass, and then they have one called YOLO, which is deny everything. which I would think that's the opposite of what YOLO actually means, but that's neither here nor there. And there's just a lot of interesting, nerdy things that you can dive into this code base and check out. But unfortunately, that's not what this video is about, since I can't actually show you the code base. What I really want to talk about is not the deep dive into the code base, but some of the unreleased features and some of those silly, fun features, starting with undercover mode, because it's absolutely hilarious. So it's an entire system that only activates for Anthropic employees, which is what this user type equals ant has been determined. Ant means, hey, this user type is an employee, so activate these features. One of those features being undercover mode, which is safety utilities for contributing to public open source repos. And it's specifically designed to prevent Anthropic's internal information from leaking, which we only know about because their internal information was leaked. I swear, you can't make this stuff up. So it tells Claude, to ensure that Claude or an employee can't leak this information, to never mention that it's an AI, never mention the code names that it uses. Make sure you don't release any of the unreleased model numbers, so like Opus 4.7, no internal repo or project names, no Slack channels, no internal short links, no Claude Code anything. So when they're contributing to any other open source project, that you don't know whether it's AI or not, because there's zero attribution to Claude Code or AI or anything like that at all. And this is a feature that is turned on automatically and cannot be turned off. Obviously, unless they go into the code and turn it off, but the other Anthropic employees who use Claude Code don't have access to that code, presumably. So they have no control over that. You know what? I think I'm just going to show some of this code and hope for the best. So if you're watching this in the future, hopefully it doesn't get taken down. But if it does and everything is blurred out, then that means I was able to successfully appeal it, as long as I put blocks over the code and not show it. Now, I wanted to go over undercover mode first because it's just funny. It is ironic that they built an entire system being so concerned about leaking internal information, and the only reason we know that it exists is because they leaked internal information. And now, there is an allow list. So like if Anthropic employees are using Claude Code, this doesn't activate if they're working on an Anthropic repo internally that's on the allow list. And Claude Code would probably be on the allow list. And even if it wasn't, this isn't even an issue that would have caught. Again, I just thought it was funny. But now I want to talk about what is probably the biggest unreleased feature that they have, known as Kairos. Now, Kairos, I think it's important to note, it's named after a Greek word for at the right time, or like the critical time. And I say that's important because Kairos is basically an always on Claude. It's like an assistant, a persistent assistant that is on in the background. So instead of you typing a prompt and Claude responding, obviously you can still do this, Kairos watches your project. It keeps daily logs of your project. And on a regular interval, it gets a tick prompt where it decides, should I do something or should I stay quiet? And if it decides that it should do something, then there's a 15-second rule, where if whatever it wants to do would block your workflow that you're currently on for more than 15 seconds, it defers. And it also has actually tools that are exclusive to Kairos, like send user file. So you can now get notifications for when Kairos does something, as well as summaries. And those summaries actually have a brief mode. So when Kairos is active, there's a special output called brief, which is extremely concise responses designed for persistent assistant that shouldn't flood your terminal, because you don't want to just be faced with like a wall of text from what Kairos is doing all the time. And I'm assuming that these responses are the same as these summaries, but I could be wrong on that. And then there's push notifications, not to be confused with notifications, because as you know, push notifications are like what are on your phone, which, by the way, check out my phone. I did the Halo thing with the orange phone and the green case. But push notifications, because you can use Claude Code from anywhere now, and it's all interconnected and things of that nature. So basically you have this assistant looking at your code base, maybe it sees a bugs or a to-do or a fix me or something along those lines. And I assume, based on what I've seen, that it'll tackle those things again in the background as long as it passes through that 15-second rule and the prompt and things of that nature. And then it'll push files directly to you for the changes it made or any questions it has or anything like that. I can only imagine how expensive that is going to be. And then they have this thing called the Dream system. However, this was already what I believe to be leaked in the form of /dream, because this post from 8 days ago said that /dream, auto dream, was just quietly released, and just like this individual right here, couldn't find any sort of official announcement from Anthropic about this release. So I don't know if they just quietly released it or if they didn't mean to release it and it leaked out a week ago. But basically what it does is that it serves as a background memory consolidation engine that runs as a forked subagent. And it has to pass 3 gates. One is it has to have been at least 24 hours since the last dream. There has to be at least 5 sessions since the last dream. And it must acquire a consolidation lock so it prevents concurrent dreams. And all 3 of these must pass. And then what it does is it prunes out all of the bad information. It effectively takes those to dream up a new conversation that didn't actually happen, but with only relevant information from those past sessions. And the prompt literally says you are performing a dream, a reflective pass over your memory files. Synthesize what you've learned recently into durable, well-organized memories so that future sessions can orient quickly. So that's what it does. And then there's another feature that I am even more afraid of for how much it's going to cost compared to Kairos even, and that is coordinator mode. Okay, coordinator mode module, get coordinator user context is all of this. Yeah, conditional import for coordinator mode. So this one turns Claude Code, the single agent, as we all know and may or may not love, into an agent orchestrator. This is something that Warp just released as well with Oz. This is what a lot of AI labs and tools and folks are doing right now. So basically what you do, instead of you being the manager over all of these different Claude Code sessions, you tell a Claude Code session to become a manager over multiple worker agents in parallel. So you're just outsourcing yourself as manager to Claude Code as manager, and you are the Claude Code manager's manager. And you can see the prompt for coordinator mode. I sure hope I don't. This may be the biggest leak, is the actual prompts, not just the code. But anyway, it's telling coordinator mode. Actually, I'm just going to go to this. Oh, it has all of this in here. You are Claude Code, an AI assistant that orchestrates software engineering tasks across multiple workers. So that's what it is. And then it has a mention of, under concurrency, parallelism is your superpower. Workers are async. Launch independent workers concurrently whenever possible. Don't serialize work that can run simultaneously, and look for opportunities to fan out. When doing research, cover multiple angles to launch workers in parallel, make multiple tool calls in a single message. And then I'm not going to show you the rest of this. It hopefully will be blurred out, but there's a lot of information. This is coordinatormode.ts. Oh, and I got to show this. So there are prompt tips for the Claude Code manager agent to prompt the worker agents. And it said bad examples are fix the bug we discussed because it has no context. Workers can't see your conversation. It says another bad example is based on your findings, implement the fix. Create a PR for recent changes. Something went wrong with the test. Can you look? So if you want to know how to properly prompt, just see how the Claude Code team told the Claude Code manager agent to prompt the Claude Code workers. And then there's a feature called Ultra Plan, a 30-minute remote planning session. And I feel like plan mode is slept on. I feel like a lot of people should use plan mode that don't. If you're just sitting there prompting Codex or Claude or whatever every single time and not going into plan mode or not telling it to go into plan mode and actually create a plan for what you want, I think you are not only wasting time, wasting money, your hair is going gray sooner, because my results, having it plan out something in its own plan mode based on what I want, and the code that comes out at the end, the usability of the code, is, well, I'm not going to give a number to it, but it's a whole lot better. I face less problems when I have the AI plan my problem out first, or plan the solution to my problem out first. In ultra plan mode is where Claude Code offloads a complex planning task to a remote cloud container runtime session, which is running Opus 4.6 and gives up to 30 minutes to think and lets you approve the result from your browser. However, something super weird about it is, they did actually include this. So your terminal shows a polling state, and then it checks every 3 seconds for the result. Why 3 seconds? That seems like a lot. Now, if it doesn't cost that much to check every 3 seconds, it's very minuscule, then okay, so be it. I mean, and that is probably the case, so fine. And not only that, but you can actually, there's a browser-based UI that lets you watch the planning happen and then approve or reject it. And when you approve it, there's a Sentinel value right here, Ultra Plan, Teleport, Sentinel, that teleports the plan back to your local terminal. So basically, Claude goes away to think about how to implement your plan while you can go do something else. And all of these are very cool and all, don't get me wrong, but there's one that is wild, and that is anti-distillation, which sends fake tools opt-in for 1P CLI only. I don't know how to interpret that. Basically, what it does is that when you have other harnesses and tools running Claude's models, they can see how Claude, like Opus 4.6, for example, how it operates. And this anti-distillation deal right here is Anthropic's way to actively defend against competitors trying to copy Claude's behavior. And when this anti-distillation CC feature is on, Claude Code injects fake tool definitions into its API requests. So to clarify, a competitor could be recording the API traffic, trying to distill how Claude works. And this is giving them bad data because it's injecting fake tool definitions into those API requests. So basically, the Claude Code team and Anthropic are like, we have the best harness. Everything we do is the best. We don't want anybody to steal what we're doing, so we're going to make sure that they can't and put these measures in place to ensure that nobody can steal it. And then we're going to release the entire source map, our entire source code for Claude Code, so that way all of these people that we gave bad data in the first place that were trying some abstract way of copying us can just straight up copy us and see exactly how we do everything. I also don't think that Claude Code is the best harness there is, but that's neither here nor there. Now, those are like some pretty solid features that are to be released. But what's way cooler than that are all of the silly things that are in this code base. And one was, I don't know if I haven't checked today, I'm recording this on April 1st, was supposed to start today, April 1st, and that is their buddy system. I think they were going to roll it out from April 1st to April 7th. And I do feel bad that they can't. Yes, teaser window. April 1 through 7, 2026 only. Command stays live forever after. And it was going to be a cool little like Tamagotchi pet system called Buddy, where somebody created this nice little site, Claude Buddy Viewer, where you can view all of the sprites. It's 18 animated companions across 5 rarity tiers, and each buddy gets 5 stats. Show stats. So you have debugging, patience, chaos, wisdom, snark. This one down here, you can see that it's heavier on wisdom. This one's heavier on chaos. I don't think I'd appreciate that. I would like the wisdom. Maybe a little bit of snark and some really good debugging. Which one's the best at debugging? Oh, some of the common ones up here. So yeah, that was leaked. Penguin mode was leaked, which is just the code name internally used for fast mode. But you can see that like everything else is penguin themed as well. It's just penguins all the way down. And I'm sure y'all have seen this by now. 1.9 million views, Wes Boss. Claude Code leaked their source map. Well, okay, we went over that. I immediately went for the one thing that mattered. Spinner verbs. There are 187 spinner verbs that they have in this array here. So you know when it's, it's working, and it says it's fermenting or it's foraging or it's discombobulating. You can see all of them right here. And there's also 20, apologies for the parents in the room, hide this from your kids. I don't think I have many kids that watch my channel, but I'm not going to say any of these words because I just don't cuss, or try not to. But they filter out 25 swear words to ensure that these are not included in their random 4-character IDs that they give, which, okay, that makes sense. I also saw, I don't know if Wes posted this, but I also saw that they recognize when the user cusses at Claude Code and then uses that data as an indication that the user is frustrated with Claude Code. Let's figure out why and fix it. Oh, it's right here. Yes. Swearing at Claude Code logs your prompt as negative in their internal analytics. Continue, keep going, and go on all match for the agent to keep going. Well, that didn't match exactly what I said, but I read elsewhere that they use that data in order to improve. That's why they log it. They use it in order to improve their product. And we can go on and on and on about this, but what does this really mean for competitors and for the industry? Nothing, really. People don't pay for Claude Max in order to use Claude Code in Claude models on Claude Code. They pay for Claude Max because they want the subsidization of the inference. These Claude Max plans used to give you $2,000 or more worth of inference for the $100 or $200 that you pay for the plan per month. But now, as we hit 1,000 different posts just like this, where people are hitting their limits very quick this week, even with 20x Pro plan, it makes my Claude Code unusable. That subsidization seems to be quickly coming to an end, and they're just kind of rug pulling it too. And I only use the term rug pull in the sense of they're not being transparent about it. They're not saying, hey, we've been giving you all this free stuff for a while now. We need to scale that back. They're just doing it without saying anything. And that is the biggest issue that I have with Anthropic, is that they are very bad at PR, not pull requests. Use grep for pull requests. I'm talking about public relations, because they seemingly never want to listen to us. It's like everything they do, they have to put their lawyers as the PR people. I don't know whose idea that was. That's not a good idea to have lawyers as your PR people. Have devs talking about these things. Like somebody that's relatable, like devs talking to devs. It makes sense. I can go on a whole tangent about this. I don't really want to. That's why I am stumbling over my words right now, but it's just whatever. One super funny thing that I wanted to include earlier in this video, but I forgot, is this PR right here to the official Anthropic Claude Code repo, which has pretty much always existed, but it just didn't contain the source code. It contains other things like skills and things of that nature. Somebody created a pull request to add the entire leaked Claude Code source code to the Claude Code repo, but it was generated with Claude Code, the actual pull request itself, and then it got closed, and then it got deleted. And the only way I'm able to be on this page right now is because I never refresh the page. But what I'm going to do right now, okay, I'm going to log all of this information just for history's sake, as well as it looks good to me, go ahead and merge comment right there. Let me go all the way down. Okay. And as I refresh, it'll be gone. Because like I said, Anthropic has been DMCAing all of the mirrors, and that pull request contained the entirety of the source code on their own repository just underneath the pull requests. Now, technically it takes you elsewhere to the code files, but that's still technically under the pull request in their repo. So they had to get rid of that one as well. So that is the Claude Code source code leak. And that's all I have to say about it. Y'all have a good one.